Hey, we want to welcome
It's
everyone
real.
to It's Working. Where's your heart? Welcome everyone where we champion vulnerability as a core human strength. And as always, it is a pleasure to be here to hold space with two absolutely amazing, outstanding, extraordinary, blessings, angel on earth human beings that I have here. My man, 20 grand, the Royce, and the one and only, the real.
It's true.
Teresa Robinson in the house. What's the good word? And we just ask everybody that if you're tuning in right now, now's a really good opportunity to make sure that you share, that you like if you're on YouTube, that you share the link if you're on Facebook or YouTube for anyone who needs to hear a message that is centered around vulnerability in a non-toxic way. We have a really, really interesting topic today and some amazing human beings that are going to be playing with us. So it's going to be real nice. So, the Royce, what's up, man?
Well, I mean, Susan already nailing it over there. I don't know that comment.
I can't see.
Oh, well, click on the comments over there.
Yeah. She said, oh, that new intro, no. Yeah, hey, listen.
So excited.
Listen, we stepping our game up, Susan. We stepping our game up.
Well, let's be real clear here. Stepping our game up. What we really mean is Teresa took a bunch of like ideas that we had and made it work, and then did a bunch of shit we didn't think about, and was like, "This is better."
Right. She.
I'm just glad you guys are happy with it.
And she put that black woman touch on it. She was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make this home for everybody. I'm gonna make this home for everybody." I was okay. All right.
I do not want to be another white man that like steals thunder from black women. Let's just not have that be the dynamic.
Oh listen. I think that all of our viewers know the dramatic change between that intro and everything that's going on and the real Teresa Robinson is holding us down.
It's true.
That's real. That's real talk.
It's
so,
true.
Yeah, man, how's everybody feeling?
Good.
It's
been a good week. Definitely.
It has been a good week.
Like, holy crap. Yeah. You know what my gratitude is this week? Yeah.
What is it?
It's Teresa. It's the fact that the three of us have been connected since the beginning. It's the energy that happens when the three of us just start chewing on something. Like, I'm grateful for like what happens to my heart getting pulled forward, even as it's fucking snowing outside. What the hell? But like,
listen,
second
Southerner,
we end up in this space,
it's okay. It's snowing in Chicagoland too.
Yeah, but y'all used to that shit.
Used to that.
I remember living in Minnesota, North Dakota, and that crap. Like, come on, you're like, oh, it's Tuesday.
Right. That is true. You're 100% correct too. So I can't even front. You're right. You're right about that one.
There's LG too. He's chiming in. Good to see him on here again today.
All right, let me see if I can get this out.
Man.
Oh, hey, man, that's people, man. That's my people, man. Joanne LeGrone. Yes. Day one, man. Day one.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get this out on some of the other.
All right, yeah, do your thing, Teresa. So, did you say a gratitude already? Did you shoot one?
I think that's what we're going to be working on right now.
Oh, look at this, y'all.
Yeah.
What?
Wait, watch this. Check this out. That production quality.
Leaps. So Teresa, why don't you kick off gratitude then? I think I already did mine.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like this preparation for this show, I mean, because I was nervous. I mean, it was exciting to and essentially create the branding, which I do every day in my job. But I mean, this was something that it just really reminded me of when you have a talent to be blessed with, and you get to share it. That's the gratitude I have, is that I get to share this talent with everybody, and it's going to help the show in the process. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as if you hadn't done enough already. Like back, just so listeners, like seriously, when we began this thing, we're like week one, we're like, hey, we should get a logo together. I'm like, I know. So Teresa comes in on the conversation, and it was one of the most like lit conversations from the beginning. It was fire. So just yeah, what it there, I mean, that really is my gratitude too. Just like what it's like to have partners in crime who are
Yep.
up to neat stuff, and yeah, that we can
But
hold space from different perspectives, but still, anyway, yeah. What you got, Torian?
but can't share it on Facebook for some reason. I don't know what's going on with this today, but I can't get
Oh,
it to all my channels. But
are,
it's okay.
are
It's
you
okay.
on? I think you probably have to post them one by one now.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know. I'm just,
It's like,
We're
we
learning,
gotta
y'all.
work.
We're
Yeah.
learning.
I don't know, man. You know, I don't even feel that way, but it's not happening the way I want to, and I want to make sure that I'm fully engaged with all of our people.
Because
But,
you don't have to push buttons
Yeah.
anymore.
Exactly. Listen, I don't even know what to do with my hands anymore. I feel like I'm like in a club, you know.
Goodness, I like Brett's comment. Grade A, Torian.
Hey, listen, Brett, that's my guy, man. That's Bedpan. That's my guy. Shout out to the F3 Nation. Man, those are my brothers right there. I actually posted for the first time, and posted means worked out with my brothers this morning for the first time in about 2 months because I had a pulled hamstring. So it was good to be out in the gloom with the brother. Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
nice.
Yeah, that's where Pi Eric. That's where he and I we met there too. He's a leader in the organization.
Yeah.
Good brothers, man. We'll talk a lot more about that. But I didn't even get to my gratitude.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. I'm rambling like I do.
We changed habits, man.
Sorry,
Everything's,
man. Listen,
everything's messed up.
It's the hands, bro. It's the hands. So my word would be well, I guess let me set it up first. So I'm a diver. I like to dive. And one of the things that I struggled with when I first started diving was buoyancy, right? And that's the amount of weight that you have like kind of around your waist that keeps you from floating up to the top or sinking too far from the bottom. And the reason I'm grateful for it is because it's one of those things, and when you're under the water and you kick in one direction, or you really just kind of stroke, that it literally moves you toward a trajectory in a cardinal direction, but you really don't know. And so you really have to be present and be fluid in how you move. And I'm grateful for that, and the reminder of it this week. There have been a lot of changes, and we've talked about some of the things that I've had going on and stuff like that. And considering or having conversations in areas that you didn't think you would have, maybe even ever again. But just being open and being buoyant enough to be okay with it and let those doors open up, and be very grateful just for the opportunities in that. So just having buoyancy and being flexible, I'm really, really grateful for this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's a lot. Holy crap.
And listen, I know everyone listening though, it's a lot for everybody right now. Everybody. If I were to talk to one person who was just like, you know what, man, 2020 I've been chilling. Like I don't, socioeconomically, racially, it's just, it's a lot. And so we are actually having, I think, a collective human experience. But I also am very optimistic too, because, this is where the diamonds come out of the friction. This is where the hard rocks are kind of cut. And in the middle, you see this precious stone that will kind of propel us as human beings. I'm really hoping that's the case. I'm optimistic about that. So, and that's part of our conversation we're going to have tonight.
Exactly.
Yay.
And I just love that these conversations keep happening, especially this week, just running into people that have watched the show and they loved the topic and they loved how it went. I think that the topic discussions we're coming up with is really making people think. And that's what I'm really liking about the show.
I'm all about it. I'm all about it. So we just came off of a interesting week. So I think we jump right into it, man. Last
Look
week.
at this. This is magical.
I know, right? It's magical. And I got my hands.
Yes!
And I got my hands.
No, this is amazing. Okay, so anyway, yeah. Oh God. I kind of want to forget about this last week in a lot of fronts, man. What you got?
No, tell us why. Why do you want to forget about last week?
I mean, I guess we finally had a presidential debate that like sounded all presidential for most of it. I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. We actually got policies.
Yeah.
I guess.
As an American citizen, I was not embarrassed. That's what I left. Yeah. Like I wasn't embarrassed.
Shit. Here's our standard, folks.
I'm just being honest. I was like, you know what, my friends all around the world, I can say, hey, listen, it was remotely cordial, and it actually did talk about things that affect the larger population in the United States and not a sandbox yelling match. So
yeah, no, that's yeah. And yeah, Annette's a friend of mine also there popping up. Looking forward to the conversation. Good to see you, Annette. Thanks for popping in again. Yeah, it's yeah. I think here's the best part about this thing is all the connections with all the folks across the country. I mean, that's really the only reason I continue to use Facebook is because it's become living Rolodex, right? I mean, it's the only place I'm connected to a whole bunch of people across the country right now, especially during COVID.
It's true.
So last week, what you got on last week now, Teresa? What you got?
Well, I have to say I agree with you on the fact of the debate. Really wishing that debate actually happened at a time that it made sense. I feel like that debate, like the debates seem to be happening way too late. Like I feel like all of this should have happened when the candidates announced they were running for president, because then that would have made a lot more sense for people to sit down and really hear what they have to say. But it did make me do something that I don't think a lot of people would have thought of, and that is that I went and got the transcript of the debate, because I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to the candidates, it's a show. The showmanship, the play on this is who I'm supposed to be. It's like a show for them. So when you actually read what they're saying, it's very interesting. And I mean, for example, if you read what Trump says as opposed to what he's performing, it's really eye-opening. That's probably the most positive word that I can.
Well, I thought that was going to go a different direction. That's interesting.
Okay,
Jerry. So this is one of our guests today. This is their spouse, and
I love that quote.
One of my favorite humans, Jerry. He will always put his finger right on it. Yes.
Ooh,
there it is.
That's good. Pretty much. So, I mean, a lot of people, when they read it, when it was in written form, they were just like, wow, none of that made sense. And it was quite interesting. One of the things I did realize, which I think in a sense I already did, if the question to Trump is anything dealing with the words black or people of color, he uses his standard soundbite. There was nothing new. There was nothing like the question that was asked, which I found very interesting. The moderator asked about the talk when families have to sit down and have the conversation with their children of what they're supposed to do when a cop pulls them over. You know, white families don't have to have that conversation. And she asked the candidates, do you know what the talk is and what would you tell these families? Biden gave his answer, which really reflected what the question was. When you look at the transcript of what Trump said, it was the soundbite. It was the soundbite. You know, I'm the least racist person in this room. I've done more for the Black community. You know, not as much, but I'm right up there with Abraham Lincoln. That standard soundbite was the same thing he would say. And I realized, oh, that must be the thing. If Black comes up, that's the answer. Also, my mom pointed out something from that debate. He said he's the least racist person in the room, which still makes him racist. You notice he doesn't say, I'm not racist. He says I'm the least racist person in the room. So essentially, he's saying he's racist. I'm just pointing that out.
I mean, I kind of think, I mean, I know I'm racist still. So, I mean, I also have no expectation that anyone is non-racist. In this fucking country.
But you know, with something like that, I just hope that people see the showmanship in it all. You know, when I watch debates like that, I watch as an informed skeptic. And I know that there are certain words, certain phrases that people have to do just to placate their base. I don't care if you're, you know, on the purple side, green side, or whatever. And so you hear those soundbites. You hear the, okay, when it gets to a sticking point or an area in which my team has deemed I'm not doing well, I just want to give a neutral canned response. And it's sad because as U.S. citizens, what got Obama elected and what got Trump elected is the exact same thing. Now, people have different reasons why, but it was because people wanted real politicians that were really trying to show up in their best interest. You don't even, and we're seeing, you don't even have to agree with them 100%. As long as there's some cardinal direction and they feel like they're showing up as a real person, people voted for them. Now, does that mean that that was the case when afterwards, after they got into office? Maybe not. But the same underlying human premise is what got people elected. So I just want, I want more authenticity. I mean, people have actually said to me that I should run for office, and I tell them, I said, I'm too much.
I don't hate that idea.
But I told them, I said, I'm too much in the center. I wouldn't get elected because everyone would find something that was probably really wrong with my platform, because I would be trying to find that middle ground. But that's what people want, though. That really is what people want. And I don't know. Well, hopefully, you know, things will happen in the next few weeks and we can get back to a new normal that's a little bit more collective. I guess that's the best terms that I have.
We got another one from Jerry. Just imagine how racist his family is if he is the least racist. Yeah, essentially, he called his wife and children more racist than him. They were in the audience.
Because they were in the room.
Yeah, right. I was just like, wow, you just throw anybody under the bus. Okay. We know how that works now. We know how that works.
So I also want to say hi back to Penny. Thanks for chiming in and for joining us today. Yeah. It's God, this is nuts, y'all.
It's great. It's happening, bro. It's happening.
It is. I'm just gonna keep
real production quality is up.
Oh my gosh, you guys!
It's true.
Teresa the Magnificent is in the place to be.
It's true. It's true.
You guys are hilarious. You're hilarious.
We're just having fun, man. I mean, you know, it's with everything going on right now. Anytime I can steal a laugh, I'm taking it.
Absolutely.
I'm taking it.
Absolutely.
You know? So.
No, you're right.
Oh goodness.
Oh boy. So my last week, I mean, I kind of touched on it. I mean, for me, it was the debate was one thing, but just the fluidity of opportunities and things and narratives that have kind of happened over the past week. I did appreciate like the civility of the debate, that's in all seriousness. And you know, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the next 2 weeks and the reaction beyond the election, you know, what that looks like. That's what I'm curious to kind of see the narrative that comes out of that and how and or if we can remain human beings.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
You know? Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we ready?
We are ready.
Man, let's do this. Let's do what we do. Come on.
Alrighty.
Where's your heart? Pass it on. Like it. Please, ladies and gentlemen. This is the time. This week's topic is coming up.
I knew this question was coming, and I waited until someone asked it nicely to respond. So no, there's no such thing as white pride, in part because there is no white culture. You can have pride based on your ethnicity, like Scottish, German, Irish. You can even have regional pride, like Southern pride. These things usually apply to your cultural identity, like how you grew up, etc. And I had some people argue, well, other colors have pride, and no, they don't. Chicano, Latino pride, Asian pride, those are not colors. The one exception is Black pride, and that's because they've had a unique experience no one else has. Black Americans were robbed of their culture. They don't know where they come from. Two Black Americans meet. They could have come from warring African tribes. They don't know. What they do know is their American experience was similar. In other words, the thing that connects them is the color of their skin and how society has treated them as a result. You also have to consider where the terms white pride and black pride originate. White pride was coined by white supremacists. Black pride is from the Black Power and Civil Rights movement. So one represents superiority and hate, and the other a fight for equality.
All right, so that leads us directly into our topic.
Yeah.
Our topic for the day. What is whiteness? We touched on some of this. We touched on some of this before, but we touched on it more from, you know, what is blackness last week. But these are topics that we want to make sure that we keep coming back to. We hold space where we bring different opinions, different voices, so that we can, you know, actually start to solidify some of this and agree to disagree in some areas as well. So Royce, or Royce, what are you thinking, man? This is big for you.
Oh, it is, because I mean, I think the video kind of lays the foundation for basic understanding of whiteness is not an ethnicity. It's not. I mean, first off, race itself is a failed attempt. Yeah. Again, we have to keep pounding this home. The notion of race was a failed attempt to scientifically prove why one group of people was superior to another. And it failed miserably because the farther they went down the rabbit hole, and especially once DNA was involved, it became totally and absolutely clear that that we have far more in common by being human beings than what makes us different. And again, it's more likely that Torian could give me a kidney successfully than any folks on the show today. So yeah. So yeah.
And you're right. Oh no,
And-
and as
And
much as it is created, it is constructed, it is very real. It is
yes,
a knee on the neck of millions and millions of people. And here's my thing, and I always say this because people are born into it.
Yep.
Right. This isn't a character question. This isn't something that you have at least conscious control in how we define consciousness right now. It's something that you're born into, yet it can dictate overtly or covertly how you show up, why you show up, how you process the world, how you make decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And so, just really having some dialogue around this is important, man. So I'm really, really excited about the guest that you're about to introduce, because we're going to hear some amazing stories around how they see whiteness, what is it, how it fits into this into the construct that we have right now. So yeah, man.
Yeah.
And
you're nailing it there, because social constructs, because we are social animals, like this is how we adapt. This is how we this is why these squishy little pink bodies that we have, the second you pierce our skin, we're all just pink water bags. That's why this squishy little human creature is dominating the planet. It's because of variety, it's because of our adaptability, it's because of our social constructs. So that's, it has very real effects. So the group that we're bringing in here today, these are 3 of a 5-person tribe, is the best way to kind of articulate who these folks are. 5 of them grew up together, met when they were very young. The 3 that are on their show, I know personally, which I was like, hey, come see them. So I know there's another 2 out there that I haven't met yet that I can't wait to. I'm babbling because I'm excited. So first portion of our trio is so I mentioned to Torian and Teresa beforehand, she's one of those people that I respect deeply because she made a 20-year career working as a costume designer and constructor in theater. And I don't know if anybody's ever tried to make a living in theater, but it's fucking hellacious. And she did it for 20 years and was very much in demand, and then decided she was going to go back to school and work out of human-centered design and engineering at the University of Washington. So her website, by the way, and we'll mention this again later, but her website is Kellie, KELLIED at KellieAD.com. So let's bring Kellie out here.
Kellie,
there she is.
Hey guys,
and the Antifa shirt.
Going first. He's against fashion.
She's got it. The second guest that we popping out today. So this is the person that I met first of this little tribe. She was the stage manager for a show that I was in. And just one of those amazing beings who managed to like both hold down the backstage and like still give those of us on stage, our little prima donna bullshit moments, and still help us be human as we were doing it. So again, a magical human. She has a bunch that she's working on right now. She does writing, chaos consulting, and coaching. And she's also a guest lecturer for the Yale School of Drama. And she also is the co-founder of Harriet B's Daughters. And you'll want to check them out on the web too, harrietbdaughters.org. They do intersectional support for women in location-based entertainment. So let's bring Nicola out here.
Nicola,
Yay!
what's up?
Inspiration behind the shirt. Big Nick
Yes.
energy. We've got that one.
But I have to fix one thing. Harriet B's daughters, we are for women plus, we are an intersectional Dumbledore's army.
That's
So,
what you were saying.
We welcome all.
Yay! Thank you for that correction. I love it. Yeah, because that's one of the wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot there. I can't wait to get into it. So I need to shut up. So we're gonna our last guest today for introduction. So we have these little questions that we send out to people, and these three were hilarious last night. Lighting up the text, going, "How the fuck are we supposed to answer this?" So. Our third guest, her response was, "It's fucking complicated." This is so I'm actually this to the audience. I think it sets up today's conversation. It's complicated for everyone, but I'm a walking example where the complexity can't be easily rationalized, and therefore it's front and center. Her assertion is that our world is defined by our community and surroundings. So there's no assumptions that hold true and everywhere. Yeah. So let's bring Jee here. Look at this.
Hello.
Listen, dream team.
Here it is. So who wants to kick this off? What the hell is whiteness?
Yes. I'm just going to sit back and just listen. I'm going to lean back just like this.
It's complicated.
Well, okay. Well, you're not going to stop there.
Just diving right in. Huh?
Stop right in. What is whiteness? What is it?
Diving right in.
The biggest fucking lie of my life.
Go, say more.
Okay.
So for there's a couple folks actually in the chat who know me a little bit. I grew up second and third gen of a couple of cultures. So that's part of why the intro discussion really hits me. Anytime it's like, white pride, I'm like, yeah, that's never been my culture. I have cultures that speak other language and have very specific constructs that I have been flat out taught to hide from a very young age, from actually earlier than I met either of these two women, specifically so that I can appear and conform. I'm an assimilation baby. And I think that's one of the things that's unique is that somebody flat out taught it to me to keep me safe. And most people with this little melanin have ever been sat down and explained what whiteness is for their safety.
So let's dig into that a little bit. So can you give us some examples of what happened when someone actually set you down and said what and why? Sure.
So to set the baseline, my father was born in the US and then they moved back to southern Italy. For those who don't know the history of Italy, there are actually 7 different countries who were united under a king and then a dictator, and then the modern Italy. So the Italian I speak isn't even modern Italian, has a different language base, has a whole different set of cultural contexts. My mother's family is Russian Jewish. American Jews have dominated the diaspora discussion, but only a very specific, like we all know Jerry Seinfeld. I do not have Jerry Seinfeld's background. I do not come from spaces that have large communities built around them. So when we were growing up, where I knew most of these folks from, there was one synagogue for over 200 miles. And that had to carry a number of different segments of the practice. What's really specific about that is that some people have taken that assimilation into finding a way to codify Judaism. It's Joe Lieberman, right? I don't care what church that somebody goes to on Sunday, so long as he prays. We don't pray on Sundays. We pray on Saturdays, but that's a whole other discussion we'll get to in a moment. There's a movement to make us appear like Presbyterians, basically, right? It's just another thing. It just looks like it. When actually, like a really good example is, all of you would say there are 10 commandments, and I would say there are 211 under that practice.
Yeah.
There's proximal primary differences that actually make my practice look a lot more like other religions that we have done as much as we can to quiet and shove away and look, right? Hanukkah is not a major tradition.
Yeah.
We put it there because we want a Christmas so that we do something on a vacation and don't have to give up our vacation days for it.
Yeah.
That's a different discussion.
The high holy
when
days
I'm-
actually just came and went.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, a company I know just switched to unlimited personal days this year. And suddenly one of their meetings, somebody looked at the calendar and went, wait, why is everybody out on Tuesday? Like, there's like 9 of you out. How was that approved? And they were like, universal days off. And they were like, oh, right. And they're like, yeah, it's Yom Kippur. And the exec had started to say, why have we never had that many of you out on Yom Kippur before? And then stop and realize, because it's never been a free day before. Yeah. That's a massive understanding of how the world works.
And so when you were set down around some of these differences that you had, it was said that you can only promote or talk about parts of them?
Yes, only the parts that sound like what other people are comfortable with. Specifically, my familial group comes from what we would now call the Ukraine and Lithuania. And those were some of the areas that most people are familiar with the German Holocaust under the Nazis. But the Cossacks and the movement in the Pale started hundreds of years before that. Massive, massive atrocities. The reason that my youngest brother looks Aryan is because of systemic rape. Like, that's why the genetics are there. It's the only reason it is. And so there's this, intergenerational trauma, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point among some of those groups of this can happen anywhere. It will happen anywhere. We are taught from a very young age of where our proximal power on the hierarchy is and how to spot it. And one of our major tenets is that it's our job to help heal it, to help heal the world in every small thing we do. We cannot turn away. Can't heal all of it. We can't turn away. But that's...
I mean, you say we, who are you referring to?
That is a foundational teaching of Judaism.
Yeah.
And then culturally, Ashkenazi Jews, which are the Jews of Eastern Europe, have a tendency in our old traditions to teach about being run out from everywhere, which is different from other cultural Jewish groups, right? The cultural Jewish groups I know in the Middle East are very rooted in their location, are very specific to their geography, and are not interested in the story that particularly American and Eastern European Jews of the diaspora tell. And that's a really important discussion that often gets overlooked when you have, we're 0.2% of the population, right? There's not a lot of us and we're overrepresented for that proportion.
So one of the things that just, that this conversation highlights for me is how different that is from like my dad's like my mom's family just said, you know, we're Pennsylvania Dutch, which I didn't know what the hell that meant or why, but it meant I liked doughy things baked. Growing up, that was like what I knew, and coffee cake. So I guess that's something. But then on my dad's side, it was like it was like we have no culture. And there was this, I've mentioned it as a story, like the Thanksgiving flan. Like, what the fuck is flan? Nobody knows. None of my white friends knew what the hell flan was. So I just didn't talk about it. And then it's Sarah, my spouse, who mentioned that thing about Christians being the worst story at Judy. She's a minister. She's saying this because she knows it. She found out on Ancestry as she did the digging that indeed that side of my dad's family, they came over as indentured servants through the sugarcane fields in Hawaii. And when they got to the mainland of the U.S. in Santa Clara County out in California, they changed their name and didn't look back. Like, my great aunt took the name to her grave. And refused to tell my dad what the old family name was. So it's this like void of like that. To me, that's what whiteness is. It's a void. It stands in for something because there's nothing there. It's a lie.
So whiteness is a lie.
It is. It's meant to construct power so that we can take advantage of it and you can't. Like, it sets up an us them mentality. And that's all, like, that's Bacon's rebellion and forward. because prior to Bacon's Rebellion, white slaves actually outnumbered African slaves in this country. Now they were all Irish, so they weren't considered human by the heads of the colony anyway. So, like, let's be clear, this is a fucked up history. And after Bacon's Rebellion, when they burned Jamestown to the ground, the landowners, who were all white men, English white men in that colony, decided that they could no longer have this situation where people were bonded around their shared oppression, and so they began to split us up. And it was very deliberate. That's when interracial marriage became illegal. So that's when the fragmentation begins, and this construct of whiteness starts to become codified in policy deliberately.
So do you think that the concept of whiteness was built and projected then? I mean, wasn't it? Yeah. I was under the impression it was way earlier than that. The social construct through the church, through the Roman Catholic Church. And this is not something that I've read in depth, but just that I've kind of heard on a cursory level. So you're saying how it's applied in the United States or just globally?
The roots of it were there. For the United States, the power structure, and Katie, by the way, is mentioning Irish for Catholic and early slavery was based on religious beliefs. That was very often the case. And the Roman Empire certainly had constructions of slavery that we inherit, because that's what ends up being the church, and that's what ends up being covering Europe, especially Western Europe. And so, yeah, a lot of this rides along with the church, but there's a stark delineation that happens after Portugal creates the African slave trade in such a way that it also creates its bedded partner capitalism. And there I would point to How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. He does the best job I've seen of articulating the points around that. But then when that lands in this country, it doesn't land just with white supremacy from the get-go. That had to be constructed. People made decisions that said, we can't have other white people. Like, first off, we don't want them taking our land, but we also can't have them acting like they're part of the slave group anymore. So
let me play a little bit of the antagonist, and please, any of our guests, feel free to chime in with this.
We need more from our guests here, less of me.
Who are the people who did this? Like, was it a concerted group of people that said, okay, this is what whiteness is going to be and look like? Because I've heard this in conversations with people who would say, you know, white supremacy doesn't really exist. Systemic racism doesn't really exist unless you can prove it, which to me implies that question in itself implies a level of power over to even, you know, ask something like that.
This needed to be a two-part. It needed to be what is whiteness, the historical dissertation, and then what is whiteness, the 21st century.
Also true.
Okay. Right. So, I mean, let's just start with now, because now it's hot, it's heated. I mean, what do we feel that it is now?
I mean, the question of like whiteness is a lie. Like, when you talk about it in power dynamics, you know, completely understand that. When you boil it down to a person, that's where it gets a little bit murky, because especially when you're talking, Royce, that last piece that you were talking about, it was defining whiteness as a flip side of blackness, or in reaction to that, which immediately leaves out a whole host of other colors in between in the conversation, because a lot of us, our ethnicity, our nationality, and our culture are all the same thing relatively, or are all the same label. Sometimes our ethnicity, our nationality, and our culture are all presenting the same thing to the outside world, which makes it significantly more simple. And other times they're not. So when we talk about like whiteness being a lie, ethnically, I'm Korean. Nationality is American. Culturally, what? Because you could say culturally American, but we distinctly know that that doesn't mean Black American. That doesn't mean Hispanic American. If we're saying I'm culturally American, the implication is white. Is it not?
There's a default. Like,
I was going to say, I think that's sort of my experience out of the three of us. We all have pretty different experiences with what this means. And for me, I've probably been required to do the least amount of thinking about it. And that kind of, just that statement alone kind of defines what that is for me, is like, I've never had to question, because this is sort of treated like the default in a lot of spaces. And there are certainly other intersections where that's not true for me, but for like my skin color or you know, being a white woman, like I am treated by the, you know, as the default in marketing stuff and lawmaking and, you know, education, like all these kinds of things. And the fact that I have been able to get away with not having to think about that or consider that on an ongoing basis is like a huge privilege. And it also means like, you know, if I didn't do that work, then I'd be missing out on actually learning more about myself and the people around me. So it's, I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, it, to me, I mean, I think that that idea that like the power there is that you get to be considered this thing that everything else is then compared against, which is
Without
sort of
ever being
bullshit.
examined.
Yeah.
So,
And it's,
so if you're a white person, should you feel guilty about being born into your whiteness? I mean, I know that's kind of a sticky question, but it's something that I think about, because because we have the same conversation around what is blackness. It's something we're born into, we don't have any control over, and even the social constructs are built into our thinking during our more fundamental years, right? So,
Torian, define born into whiteness, meaning your skin or your family.
I would say they're one and the same. So your skin. So if I'm a person that identifies as white, I'm born into that. I had no control over that, at least consciously. Should I feel guilty about white supremacy?
Well, I drive us into the gray matter of this conversation, because absolutely no choice. As an infant being adopted, my entire family is descended from a bunch of Norwegian Americans that came over 5 generations ago. There's a valley in Norway named after them, the Skavdals.
Wow.
My entire family, extended family, is white, except for people that have been married into it, which is not very many. So born into it, same as any other child, but not born into it presenting exterior white.
Wow. And that's powerful in itself, because it does go back to the question of like, is it our skin color? Is it the culture that we're born into? Is it our language? I mean, you know, I said this on another cast when I was teaching in China. This was one of the questions that I posed to my students: is what does it mean to be Chinese? And I gave them a lot of pictures of Chinese basketball players that were born to an African-American dad and a Chinese mom. They spoke fluent Chinese. They grew up in China. Were they Chinese? You know, so I don't know. I mean, I don't want to hog too much of the conversation, but I really want to kind of dig into how it shows up right now, because it seems to be very triggering for people, where if you do identify as white, there can be a lot of shame and guilt. And so I just want to identify, if that's the case, why, and is it justified?
I think there's an interesting sort of mental exercise around shame and guilt. And I don't know, a lot of us have been raised to default to shame and guilt a lot of the time. And I think that's universal to maybe, I don't know, if it's this country or if it's whiteness or if it's just so many things. Human. But like, if you want to get to what's productive about that, I think it's legitimate to, sorry, there's a garage door opening here, it's very loud. I think it's legitimate to like reflect on, you know, for me, like my part in, you know, as a white person, and say, okay, like my people here, you know, if you can call people that have done a lot of damage, maybe aren't handling things super great a lot of the time, and it would be weird to not, recognize that that's disappointing and that that's, a negative thing and to feel bad about it. But if you want to get to the part of things that actually becomes productive, that means that you can drive change, when you're feeling guilty about it as like your main, experience of that, you're centering yourself and not your greater impact on the people around you. Like feeling guilty is me. That's like about me. It's like I feel bad. I'm worried people hate me. Like, I feel guilty. There's reflecting, saying we can all do better. I can do better. I need to learn more. I need to talk to more people or whatever. And then there's just hating yourself. Like one of those things is productive and is looking toward the future and looking toward the people around you, and the other one is directed inward.
But
so,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's a challenge too, because there's the feeling of guilt, which is like, again, these are things that live in our subconscious. We can't control them. But then there's living in the guilt, which is, I think, what I hear Kellie talking about, like living in the consciously dwelling on the guilt, which also then starts to head toward shame, which is just an absolutely destructive behavior. But there's always that notion, and we hear it in Christian scriptures, we hear it in Star Wars movies, don't be afraid. But we feel fear, like we're humans. We're animals. Fear is a thing. But there's a choice at a certain point to perpetuate that thing. And there's a choice at a certain point or maybe it's not a choice. We either perpetuate it or we find ways to listen to that fear or that guilt, in this case, listen to the guilt, and then do something, manifest something good in the world around it.
What do you think is the fear that's embedded in whiteness?
I think for most of us, it's the fear that we actually aren't all that different than those who are disadvantaged in this country. And if we don't keep our shit together, we're going to end up like them.
Well,
we're going to end up being shot by cops.
I think it's exactly it. I think War Dog of, I can't read your name, I'm sorry, War Dog of OC. We all bleed no matter race or gender. We are all equal. We're not. We know this. We have all of the statistic and data that tells us we're not.
Yeah.
And
biologically, there's a lot of equality.
Even though everything that we're talking about is a phenotype representation.
Yeah.
We have added things to that. To the question of should we feel guilt? I don't know. But every feeling is valid. And when we start to feel it, it's absolutely worth it to find out why. Do I feel guilt? Yeah, I do. Because I know that there is disparity. Because I know that I receive positive bias for that, right? My work has taken me all over the world. And there's a lot of places that I am just handed the keys to because of what this looks like. And there's not a single reason other. There's a lot of reason why my same team members who have even more executive power than I do get questioned a hell of a lot more coming back home through customs than I do because of what they look like. I feel guilty about that. I try to find the actual specific thing, and then you can actually start to unpack it and do something about it, or find a way that you reconcile it, right? Like there's a lot of discussion of spiritual debt out there, right? We can find a way to make ourselves right. But should on guilt is like, I mean, again, Jewish and Catholic, I was raised with so many versions of it that I can sit and just say, oh yeah, I feel guilty, and ignore that because guilt is always there.
I think that's the danger in guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, as I think, to bring back what Kellie said, it becomes a thing unto itself, and becomes a way to not actually address the problem.
Yeah.
But if you're white, can you really fight whiteness? Like,
yes.
Not that you should, because I think we need to define it first. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're a part of it, can you really be against the part that would be oppressive or that projects supremacy? And Royce, you and I talk about this, right? Because you talk about killing a great white male, and it's, man, I'm not saying that it shouldn't or it shouldn't, but it should or it shouldn't. But I'm really curious about how you show up in that, if innately from cultural standards, you're supposed to be the cause of it.
It's a really good question.
Sorry, I think way too
Yeah.
much.
No,
No, it's great.
like, here's an example that I think actually all of us I've had this conversation with at some point. All three of us, and sometimes Royce and Torian, I'm getting to know you, we in some ways export creative content somewhere.
Mm.
I cannot create a non-white story because it's not what I live. I can be aware of that, and I can be aware of creating and putting out those other things. Like, one of the things that I became really, really cognizantly aware of because I was working internationally so much was how often we were just outright exporting whiteness creativity ideas because that's who was in the room. And no, I can't personally fix that. But luckily I'm a manager, so I can fix that in hiring. I can set up spaces where we don't center that. But yes, that's a lot of that's a lot of unpacking to say, like, when you ask about the guilt, it's the power, right? Like, that's what we're afraid of. We're afraid of giving up that power.
Right. Yeah, because I work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and I've always spoken about inclusion. Really, there are layers to it, right? You have kind of societal, and societal is huge, and unless you are the president of a country or something like that, it's very difficult to kind of permeate the larger society. But then you can scale that down into institutional, and that can be in a university or a company or, I don't know, a municipality or something like that. But the real conduit is between that institutional and then the interpersonal, that middle part, because interpersonal is what we have right here. And this is where it becomes really triggering for people, because people who are white will say, I'm not racist. And they're probably right. But it doesn't mean that when we get into those first two areas that they don't have certain benefits that maybe even they may not be aware of. And then when we dig even deeper into it, the third layer of it is, well, then you have just the internal. And to me, when I hear people talking about being leaders, when I hear people talking about showing up in the world in a different way, or even when we start to talk about innovation, I think there's a huge dissonance to say, well, internally, I haven't really started to think about how I'm showing up and maybe some things that I have that other people don't, so that I can create better environments. And that's where, when I hear people who are against it or who say it doesn't exist, where I have to kind of push back and say, we have so many examples and you're about innovation and being the greatest. We can't do that unless we have everybody that not only feels that way, but included in that conversation of creating what greatness actually means. And those four attributes are just really important. And I think that we need to be able to understand that there's kind of layers to it, and that power dynamic is vital to address.
I also, like, when I hear like people are ignorant around the policies and stuff that may benefit them, I go to, well, I'm pretty sure people of color or people with marginalized voices in one way or another in this country are pretty damn aware of it. And at this point, as white people, if we're ignorant of it, then that's a choice that we have made. And that's the point at which I say, fuck that. Like, we can make that choice. George Floyd couldn't make that fucking choice. He was too busy trying to breathe. And yeah, War Dog of Osea, like, yeah, you're right. I mean, we are part of one human species, with the wondrous variety that comes along with that.
But we have to understand. We don't have to. This is my opinion. I don't want to project my values on them. But how I understand this is, in order to do that, there has to be a level of internal empowerment, whether it's projected, real or not. There has to be a feeling of, I have some control over
some agency,
exactly, some autonomy, some sovereignty. And that's where, when you can't eat, or you can't get access to opportunities, or you are marginalized, or you are working for 60 cents for every dollar that a man is making, where that agency and that sovereignty is slowly but surely chipped away at every single day. So that's where we need to have more compassion and understanding, because to be able to have more equity, because I'm an equity person over equality, way more on equity. Everybody has to be at the table, and it doesn't mean that you lose your equity just because other people gain equity.
No, it's very true.
I was reminded of a saying this weekend that we all have access needs. We are on a spectrum of having them met. And I really love that for the discussion of equity. To Sarah's point, that as has been quoted a lot, when you're accustomed to privilege, equity feels like oppression. All of these discussions also are very similar to me of the discussion of narcissism. Narcissists aren't born, they're made out of traumatic experiences and other people around them and other ideals. And I find that a really important way to almost look at room dynamics when we're setting this up, when we're having this conversation. Like, in a way, whiteness is an unbodied narcissist in the room that will float from body to body through discomfort and discussion as we go. And even if any one of us doesn't specifically own it in that moment, it's still there.
Yeah.
And it will still leech off of everybody in that room.
So we got to start wrapping. I'm looking at the time
already.
Teresa's keeping us on the ball. She's got this down. So let's each of you just like ping the thing that you've been doing lately and how people can find you in this world to like cheer you on. Nikki, I guess you're upper left. So let's start with you.
All right. You can find me at sherideschaos@gmail.com. If you are in or around entertainment, you can find us at harrietbeesdaughters.org. We are always actively looking for both mentees and mentors. You do not have to be woman plus spectrum to be a mentor. If you want to contact me, it's a big part of how we try to deal with that question of who's in the room and who gets to tell the story.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love it.
And
There it is. Let's see who was on the screen. Should we do Kelly? You want to go next? Yay.
Hey. I don't have a lot to report right now.
You're live on camera, Kelly.
I know.
This is it. We need a profound statement right now.
Oh God.
The pressure. It's too much. I've got a website. I've been doing freelance fabrication projects. So if you're into wearable technology or costuming, some of that cool stuff, I love to talk to artists working in tech, things like that. So please reach out and get in touch. It's kellyad.com. I totally did the same thing Royce did. I don't even know how to contact myself these days. Talk to Nikki. She's right this way. She's got cool stuff going on.
And Jee, give us a little bit to go out on from you.
I joined a woman-owned agency here in Memphis, Tennessee about 2 weeks before COVID hit. So super normal year, super normal time to move across the country. It's a marketing and sales agency that has a results guarantee behind its work, which is pretty darn rare in the industry.
Yeah. And hearing, I've talked with a few folks from the agency, and it's just incredible to work with, from my perspective as somebody who's tried to support marginalized voices, to work with women in a women-owned agency. Just the voice that I hear from y'all is pretty incredible. It's really, I don't know, it's not something I experience all the time. So it's really, really fucking cool to hear what it does to people to not be a marginalized voice, at least within a group. Like, yeah, it's good stuff. So I got two things that I got to say still. I know we're going over time. Torian,
do your thing, man.
Okay.
No, man, listen, roll with it. Do your thing, my man.
All right. So I'm in like that question of, so how do white people disrupt whiteness? Can we fight whiteness? Like that one always sticks to me. I mean, we've talked before about I always bring up Audre Lorde's essay, "The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House," and it's it's very complex, and the fact that even by disobeying my privilege, it means I had privilege to begin with. Like, let's be really clear. So what's being taken away is my privilege. That's why even equity feels like a step down when we're talking about things in terms of whiteness. So it really, yes, we can fight it, but it has to be from other perspectives. And it has to be how those other, I believe, it has to be how those other perspectives impact us and our identity and our take on it. That's what the Killing the Great White Male project is about. It's about killing the great white male, and who have I gone to for influence as Black feminists. They've taught me more about myself than my whiteness or my maleness ever did. So that's like I think the first point that we can't fight whiteness with whiteness, but we can learn to disrupt it, and we can learn to begin disobeying it and messing with it enough that the whole thing just crumbles. The other thing that I was struck by, okay, last week we had a lot of fun with the black card, right? Yeah, Torian and Teresa were joking about whether I was going to get my black card on the show, but I messed up the Good Times reference, so it's still in question.
Gotta watch Good Times.
Well, and it's an interesting thing, because I take that as a compliment, because it feels good that you two believe that I'm authentic when I show up, and I'm doing my best to hear what a marginalized experience might be like, or imagine it. And that, so to me, it's a huge compliment. So there's that aspect. And then I was thinking about the end of the show today, and I'm like, but we aren't going to joke about Torian and Teresa getting their white card from today's show. Because y'all already fucking have it, because you have to code switch every goddamn day, and operate in a world that expects you to be white, and will measure your success based on whether you are white enough to pass in the boardroom or at the table with clients and all that shit. So like that right there illustrates the vast difference. I mean, to point back to that TikTok that we started with, like the difference in the construction of these identities, because one is attributed power and one is attributed a barely human like state. So it very, there's my,
I gotta leave on a challenge for y'all, because I adore you guys and I adore Royce. He and I have had time in person, but I think by the nature of who you two are, you guys are driving a conversation that is mostly binary. There's a lot of whiteness, there's a lot of blackness, and I am at this table for the conversation for everybody who wants it. And there's not as much room at this table as I would expect from you guys.
Fair. Say more.
There's just this great space in the middle, and it's messy and it's complicated. And we barely got past like white supremacy as a reaction to people of color. When we were saying people of color, we were mostly all defaulting to Black, not broader. And there's just a lot of slime in the middle where a bunch of us live, and I want to see you guys go there, because I think we're still up here.
What do we call that topic?
I like that. I like that challenge too.
We're gonna bring you and Sinceris in on that one.
Yeah.
What would you call that topic?
I don't know. Slime.
Gray matter. Where we all really live.
Yeah. No, I think you're nailing it, because we have not had as we haven't been examining the topic of, where's the Latino identity, the Latinx identity, through all of those. Saul, I am all about the slide. Where are the variety of Asian identities? And I say Latinx identity as though it's one. There isn't. There's a million different identities that we classify as Latinx. You're exactly right. Got to find a way to phrase that topic, because that sounds fun.
We do. And I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to open up and just call us out on it, because I agree with you 100%. You're absolutely right. Thank you for keeping us honest.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The binary, we're reinforcing the binary even as we try to disrupt it.
Yep. Very true.
Yeah.
Well, This has been like the shortest hour ever. I mean, we could go on for hours, but it's been such a great show. And we definitely want to make sure that we invite all of you all back. Maybe we can even come back and touch on the topic and play in that gray sandbox that we're talking about.
Slime box.
Slime box. There you go.
Slime
Playing the
box.
slime box. Maybe we call it that, the slime box. That's it. Yeah. Any last words, anything that anyone wanted to close with before we kind of close things out? No? All right, Royce, got anything?
No, man, I said my piece.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We appreciate it. Make sure you share. And we look forward to having you once again on Where's Your Heart?
Yeah.